Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and C9 just lost to FlyQuest. So this happened yesterday, and it was pretty interesting. Um, there are a bunch of kind of like mini topics to talk about. C9's not eliminated from playoffs. They can still win the summer split. I don't know if they could miss Worlds. I think they already have Worlds locked up. I should actually check that before I say anything else. But yeah, basically the C9, like I said on the Gold Card podcast, I thought that there were ways for them to lose. Um, and the reason I thought that they had chances to lose is because they're not that superior to FlyQuest in every single role. So in the top lane, I think Licorice is better than Solo. So in these matchups, I would expect C9 to try to give Licorice a positive matchup. In the jungle and the mid lane, I think it's very close. In the jungle, I think Santorin's a lot closer to Blabber than people will give him credit for. And in the mid lane, I think Power of Evil is just a better mid laner than Niski, and I've thought that for the entire season, really. I was always kind of talking about how I thought Niski was overrated throughout the split, and people kind of disagreed with me. But I I don't think that this necessarily proves that I was right. It's just um, it's a feather in the cap for my argument, I guess. And then in the bot lane, everybody knows that C9 has a better bot lane than FlyQuest, right? So those are really the things that we have to kind of look at in these games. I'm gonna do the pick ban for each game probably. I don't want to do too much of the actual game, because like we'll just go through it like this. So first of all, we have Trundle, Graves, and Caitlyn banned. Caitlyn is thought of as a priority pick right now, and basically what Cloud9 is saying is we're gonna get rid of Caitlyn. We're gonna first pick Ezreal. You're gonna pick Ashe most likely, and then we're just gonna beat you because the Ezreal is gonna outscale you. And it's easier to play that side of the matchup in the late game as long as the teams are close. FlyQuest goes for Lilia, which is a not unique pick, but it's a newer pick that we don't really see that much in North America. That's one thing that Santorin does a decent amount, is play champions that aren't necessarily popular for everybody else. Like, he was playing Nidalee back in the day before it was popular, I think. Santorin's a good player. He pays attention to Europe. He pays attention to China, which is something that a lot of other players and analysts don't actually do, which is kind of surprising. They know that those regions are, well, they know that LPL is good, but they don't necessarily look to it for guidance on what they should be playing, which is kind of bizarre because that's obviously how it should work. Let me turn off the sound. Next up, we have Twisted Fate. And I'm not a huge Twisted Fate fan. I think that it's a very overrated champion right now. So I do like the Ez. I do like the Yuumi. Ashe is expected. Lilia is an interesting pick. I think this part of the draft is fine. Twisted Fate is kind of a question mark for me because there isn't really a lot that they can exploit at this point in the draft. Like, is Twisted Fate that strong blind? Like, you have Ezreal and you have Yuumi. You're going to want to have extended team fights. Why do you need a Twisted Fate to get them through the mid game? Like, that just means like you're going to be sending Twisted Fate either bot lane to get advantages, or sending them top for like dives and stuff like that. Playing around dragons not necessarily that easy with Ezreal because you're not going to be on the same power level as the opposing AD carry for the first like one item until you have Triforce completed, really, or Iceborne Gauntlet. And at that point, it's not even really a like a gigantic power spike in terms of raw stats. It's mostly just play style. So we got Thresh. So they blind picked Shen here, and I think that it's an okay pick because you're responding to the Twisted Fate and you're trying to like counter the plan of going bot lane. But what also can happen is you have the Vladimir kind of go into the Shen with Twisted Fate and Nocturne and just get Vladimir further ahead. So I don't think that this is even really a huge problem in terms of the draft. Like, I guess, like, you'll see what happens in the game, and it kind of makes it clear that this is not the reason why they lost. But if I clear that... So, Vladimir into Shen, basically the reason you do this is because Vladimir is going to get a free lane. So Vladimir can just farm and will outscale Shen. And will go toe-to-toe with Azir in the late game in terms of being able to do damage and being a threat. But Azir has better engage ability and is going to pump out a ton of damage. Just a very good champion. Nocturne against Lilia. Nocturne's pretty good. Blabber plays a lot of Nocturne, so it's a good champion for Blabber. But we'll see quickly that it's like completely irrelevant for how this game goes. So this is level 1. This is typically we're not going to see anything happening at this point in the game. All right, so basically what they're trying to do is that you can see on the minimap, Cloud9 is aware that FlyQuest is invading. So the reason this happens is because Lilia wants to start this camp or this camp down here. This is the Wolves camp. So she can do, or not the Wolves camp, the Chicken camp. And they can do it very fast because she has AoE damage, and it's going to help her get like a faster level 2, and it's going to take away a camp from Blabber, which is a good thing, which is going to potentially delay his level 6, and it's also just stealing away resources. So we know that FlyQuest is going to be in the jungle trying to do this. Blabber was not trying to just start his red buff. He was going to try to contest this. So you have to ask yourself, what's the point of contesting this? Like, is there anything that we benefit? Like, how do we benefit from this? And I guess it would be like Lilia has wasted time. That's about it. So they dropped the ward, and Twisted Fate is not really doing anything at this point. This is a smart thing to do because Yuumi is very weak in the early game. So invading Yuumi makes a lot of sense. Blabber just went way too far for this, and then doesn't even smite away. Doesn't even smite it away. So obviously that's a gigantic problem because you spent all of this time trying to contest 2 against 1, and you failed. So Blabber flashes out and still dies. So this is a huge problem. Obviously this isn't game over, but it's very bad. It's very bad for the Nocturne because now Nocturne has to wait a lot of additional time to hit level 6. So at this point, FlyQuest knows, okay, we took 2 camps from bot side. Blabber will be top side, so let's make sure we have vision on him, which is what Shen was able to accomplish. And they have the mid lane pressure because Twisted Fate kind of had to pay attention to what was going on in the jungle. So we have Blabber on his camp. Azir and Lilia are both invading. I'm pretty sure they knew this was going on. They just didn't respond to it fast enough. And Blabber dies again. So the game is not over, but it's kind of trending in that direction. Building up a 1,000 gold lead 3 minutes into the game is very difficult to come back from unless the other team starts to play poorly. So they're just going through all of that. 1,000 gold. This means that they're going to have the dragon pressure. Blabber's not going to be 6 for a long time, which is a problem because you want Twisted Fate and Nocturne to be able to create pressure across the map with their ultimates. So if nothing really happens, then I just expect FlyQuest is going to start taking every single dragon. which is what they kind of do. They also have the pressure that they need to get Rift Herald. They don't have much they can really do in the top lane yet. And FlyQuest, because they have this lead, they're able to look for aggressive plays, so they're using their initiative intelligently. And this is another good thing about Azir, is that Azir can come in from flanking positions and use his ultimate to make impactful plays. And this was actually a mistake by Sven. I'm not sure why he flashed first. Like, I understand that the knock-up or the pushback is going to probably kill you, but he flashed too early. He was trying to do it perfectly, when in reality you're probably better off just letting him hit you and then trying to flash away, or just knowing that, just like giving up and saying, yes, I know that I'm going to die, or save your E, because what is he even E away from? Okay, so he E's away from Lilia, because if she hits that, he's gonna get hit with Drowsy. I wonder if it would have been better to flash that and then E the other ability, but either way, it doesn't really matter. So getting a kill with a bunch of assists, obviously that's very good. So C9 at this point, they're probably talking about split pushing. Like, that's one of the only ways that they can kind of keep this game close and create pressure across the map. They go for a play onto Rift Herald, and this was kind of greedy. Not greedy. They thought that they might have time to finish this before everybody else showed up, but again, Blabber just made a mistake. He did not focus on hitting the eye and smiting at the correct time, and this just causes another lost skirmish from C9. So Blabber dies again. Blabber has 3 deaths, down 1,500 gold, down 2k at the 10-minute mark, loses all 3 camps topside. So this is a horrible spot for the Nocturne. The Nocturne is supposed to be able to help carry this game, and that's not going to happen at this point. Like, in order for C9 to come back into this and be able to win fights, it requires FlyQuest to play poorly. And at this point, C9 is very tilted and just continues to try to make plays. I don't have any problem with this. I don't care if you lose by 1,000,000 gold. A loss is a loss. So I don't really care that they kept making aggressive plays, because they're already at a point where outscaling them is most likely not going to happen. Actually, I guess they could have tried to outscale, but with Nocturne, like, that's why Nocturne doesn't make as much sense. If you have Ezreal and you have Vladimir, you could have gone for a different mid laner that's better at these, like, late game dragon fights and stuff like that instead of Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate's really not going to help you very much in the dragon fight outside of getting a pick or creating pressure by using your ultimate to try to go from to try to create a flanking position. And Nocturne, again, is a champion that makes a lot of sense in games that are stomps. Probably makes less sense in the playoffs than at any other point in time, because it is like, if you're FlyQuest and you're going to play some kind of structured team composition, there's really not a gigantic threat of you being able to flank and, like, get a bunch of assassination kills. But that's basically the game. FlyQuest just won this game pretty easily. Alright, so let's go into game 2. Game 2, they're still blue side. They still want the Ezreal, which I think is fine. They still want Ashe, which I think is fine. Yuumi, so they're saying Yumi is better than Ashe Thresh, and I tend to agree with them. Then they blind picked Gangplank, which was kind of interesting. We get a Volibear pick. I don't know what the read was for C9. Maybe they play some Gangplank mid as well. They might actually do that. But again, it's another scaling top lane pick. So you need to have things that kind of work with that concept of scaling later into the game, right? So now we have Shen. which is a champ that they just think is very strong right now. Against Gangplank, I think it's objectively a bad pick because the Gangplank should be able to scale hard enough to punish the Shen. Akali, I thought was a bad pick, blind. So I would say that this is kind of just a question mark. I'm not a huge fan of Volibear jungle in general right now. I think it's overrated. And LeBlanc is a very annoying champ to play against. So going into this game, I don't think there's a huge advantage one way or the other. I think that the Akali is not a great pick, just like the Twisted Fate wasn't a great pick. But let's just go through this game. And this game was a lot more interesting from C9 because it was more difficult for them to kind of play this correctly because of their team composition. So they did get a little bit of a gold advantage because they got first blood. They have lane pressure top lane this time because not only can Gangplank outscale, he can continuously use Parlay to hit Shen and get Earthen Grasp procs, which are going to increase his health pool throughout the game. So at this point, this was a very smart spot for FlyQuest. They knew that they were doing the dragon, and their plan was to punish this from happening. I'm not sure why Blabber went for the flash kick onto Volibear. He's most likely dead in this situation, like every single time. Shen is coming in with his ultimate. Gangplank has to use teleport, which is obviously worse. Niski dies. Thresh lives for a little bit extra time. This means that C9 has to overextend to get that kill to make it feel less bad that they just lost this fight. But then Sven dies. Gangplank manages to get away, but pretty bad. So they gave away their entire lead they gave away their gold lead for a dragon, which isn't the worst thing in the world, especially if you're an outscaling team. All right, so at this point in the game, this is a very important part of the game as well. So they have a 500 gold lead right now. It's not really a game-changing lead. Niski gets stunned by Volibear, gets stunned by Ashe. That's a very good play by Thresh. So I think that Ignar was extremely aggressive in this entire match, and did a very good job in general. So two more players die for C9. But the gold is still very close. So this is a game that you might feel bad because like you're not winning these skirmishes, but the gold is still very close, so it's not a huge deal. And like I said, Ignar was making a lot of aggressive plays throughout the match, so that was very good for them. This play was probably a little bit too aggressive, and they play it very well. Sven and Vulcan, that is. So they get the kill on Thresh. And I think that it was pretty obvious throughout this entire game that Sven and Vulcan were much, much better than Wild Turtle specifically. I think Ignar did a lot to try to make plays around the map, but they weren't playing around Wild Turtle for the most part, which I think is the right thing to do, because it's not worth playing around him. So this game is still pretty close and contested. Niski died in the bot lane for no reason. Just got baited. And then Niski dies again. So Niski had a very poor game up through this point. They get a dive off of solo, which is... this is kind of how they have to play. You attack the global ultimate. You get rid of Shen. It's the right way to do this. My allergies are bothering me. So it's a 300 gold difference at different points. And this is kind of where C9's team composition looks really shaky, is when they're continuously trying to make these plays, but they don't have a tank that can do a lot of... they don't have a tank, basically. So it's a very volatile team fight. Everybody's all over the place, which is fine if you're confident in your ability to outplay the situation. but why force yourself to have to outplay this hard? That's really the only question that I have for them. But C9 does a good job there. They get the objective. They get they win the team fight, only getting 1 kill though. They get the Rift Herald, which is good. Dragon is on the map. Niski is chasing down Solo. Nothing really happens there. FlyQuest gets this dragon. So this is a mistake, I think. I'm not sure why they are not making it more difficult for them to take this. Like, you've already fought a Rift Herald, so if you're comfortable fighting and you just won the last skirmish, you should be looking to fight. Or at least contest. Put the Ezreal in a spot where he can poke down. With this team composition as well, like, Ezreal's kind of left to his own devices. Akali's on her own. Lee Sin is on his own. Does it even really make sense to have a Gangplank? Like, they're probably better champions in this situation. Like, in a vacuum, I think the pick is fine. I like Gangplank, but just the way that it played out was very difficult. Licorice dies there. So again, C9 is uncharacteristically getting picked off across the map. We have another dragon fight. Oh, and Blabber and Sven both died here. Okay, I remember this fight. So C9 has four players die. FlyQuest gets... Oh, okay. Yeah, this is what I was tweeting about yesterday. So FlyQuest gets the Baron and then comes to contest this dragon fight. They lose dragon, so Infernal goes over to C9. And then all hell breaks loose. So Santorin dies to Lee Sin and Ezreal. Wild Turtle is just kind of in the middle of nowhere. Not very surprising, knowing the kind of player that Wild Turtle is. And they get aced. So they just got Baron. They lose all of their Baron. And then they are able to respawn in time, but right now they have a 3,000 gold deficit, and they're chasing down. So Blabber dies, and now it's a 5v4. But right now, Sven is by far the strongest champion in the game. And it's very difficult to stick on to him because of the way that Blue Ezreal builds. So FlyQuest is spending all of these resources to try to get into the fight and punish C9 for trying to end and not being able to end. But there's not really much that can happen here that's positive for FlyQuest. So C9's able to turn it once again. It was a 4v5. They won a 4v5. That's pretty difficult to do in general. It requires a high level of play. And C9 closes out this game. At that point, I thought that the series was over. I was like, okay, C9 just woke up. They were losing game 2. They completely turn it around. I need to get a tissue. All right. So, this draft, once again, we see a Caitlyn ban, we see a Sett ban, we see a Lilia ban. Twisted Fate is banned, which I don't really think is a big deal. Twisted Fate is not the reason why they lost the first game, at least not directly, but they still feel like it's worth getting rid of. Santorin gets Graves. I think Graves is one of the best champions on the patch still. There's no reason that the meta has moved away from him, but teams are for some reason not playing it as much. Ezreal and Yuumi come in. I think Ezreal Yuumi is still a very good composition, and it allows Sven and Yuumi to accentuate the advantage they have in the bot lane. So FlyQuest goes for Senna. I think this is a great pick on this patch as well. So Senna can do okay against Ezreal. She can kind of bully him a little bit in lane. And Senna also does well against things like Caitlyn. So the fact that FlyQuest is playing Senna means that they're going to be ready to deal with a lot of other team compositions that are considered popular and meta. They blind pick the Shen again. C9 takes Gangplank. And this was a very important game for this matchup specifically, because if the Shen gets destroyed once again, then you probably see them move away from Shen. Then we have Azir come in, so they blind pick Azir. Azir is a great champion. There's no reason not to blind pick him. Blabber takes Gragas, which is one of his best champions, and Nautilus is locked in with Senna, which is good, especially if it's fasting Senna, but I don't think it is fasting Senna this game. And the last pick was Zoe. So Zoe and Ezreal are good together. They have a little bit more tankiness and engage with Gragas. He's not a tank in the traditional sense where he has a huge health pool, but he does have some health regeneration. He will build Azanias. He will build like some defensive stats, but he is mostly going to be trying to burst one of these champions, and that's kind of where it becomes questionable, because Senna is really the only one you're going to be able to burst very easily. Even Azir, like, you could theoretically hit him with a full combo, but you're most likely going to get him to shuffle away, which is not the goal. The goal is to kind of blow him up. So it's FlyQuest gets ahead with a kill onto the bot lane. It's a pretty slow game in the beginning. C9 lost a fight in the top side. Ignar went for a really aggressive play here, wasn't able to finish it, but they do get the Rift Herald off of it, so that is a benefit. They have a 2-dragon advantage, and that's one of the notes that I made, was that C9 is not... they're not drafting around dragon, and they're not playing around dragon correctly. A lot of the time when they do get dragons, it's because they've been destroying all these other teams, and they haven't been able to play... They haven't needed to play the right way. But they lose 2 dragons, they're down 2 towers, they're down about 1,500 gold. So in order to equalize this gold advantage, you need to start taking towers. Top lane looks like it should die. So if I was Cloud9, I'd probably spend a little bit more resources into taking that top tower. And if you're not going to fight over the next dragon, then you should just be trading a dragon for... Oh, this is actually a really good play. So this is why you kind of see players on their favorite champions or their better champions in playoffs, even if it's not considered meta. So Gragas goes for a slam and then flashes, which is... It's not the most difficult thing. This is what's impressive. So he knows that Shen is going to flash away, and he predicts it with his ultimate, which was very good. It just shows champion mastery. So at that point, they were probably feeling really good. And that should be top. Top tower doesn't go down there. It does go down there. All right. Okay, so now we're at a dragon fight. And this is a very important... This is probably the most important part of the match up until this point. So, like we talk about, C9 has the priority on the dragon right now because of their positioning. FlyQuest has to walk through a choke point, which gives very easy targets for Gangplank ultimate, Zoe poke, Ezreal poke, and Yuumi ultimate. So C9 does a good job team fighting this, and is able to win the fight. And then they get power. They do not get Power of Evil. They do get the dragon, which is kind of the important thing. So that gives them another 6 minutes to scale. But they're really not going to outscale FlyQuest that hard in this game, because you have Azir, you have Senna, who, even though she's not dealing a ridiculous amount of damage, she's providing more and more utility and does literally scale infinitely, just not in the way that most AD carries scale. And then we have Graves, so you have the support for Graves that allows Graves to be more of a carry, which is right in line with what FlyQuest wants to do, because Santorin is much better than Wild Turtle. So C9's able to equalize towers. Now they have a slight gold advantage. This gold advantage really doesn't mean much, It just shows that they should be in the priority position because they already have the champions that are more valuable right now. So like this is a point in the game where they should be losing. I forget when the pause happened. So FlyQuest goes for an aggressive play, and they're gonna lose this fight. Oh, this is kind of what I mean when I say Wild Turtle just like isn't very smart. So Wild Turtle, instead of helping his team get out of the fight, is hit by the Gragas cask and gets taken down extremely low. Like that's kind of just really horrible positioning in general. He was in the fight for like 2 seconds and basically almost died. And this is where Ezreal shines. He's able to chase down. He gets a really good Q onto Wild Turtle here. He predicts that Solo is not going to move left, and that Wild Turtle is going to try to dodge for some reason. So that's a 2,000 gold lead. It's 8-3. They have the 2 dragons. This should be a game that they win. There's no way that they should lose this game. So let's see where things start to go wrong. And I know where they go wrong. I'm just saying. So they get 2 kills in the bot lane because Power of Evil and Solo were trying to make a play. That gives up Baron. Now they have Baron. Let's see what they do with Baron. Okay? So this was a very good play by FlyQuest. FlyQuest knows C9 is probably in the mid lane. Niski goes up for some damage onto minions for no reason and dies. That's going to make the dragon very difficult to fight. So C9 goes for map pressure instead. They're able to take a tower. And FlyQuest is looking once again to make a play somewhere. So every time that we've seen FlyQuest try to make a play, it's been with Azir. Looking for a sneaky engage. So he walks through the vision right here. Like there's no way that Gangplank can kind of see him from this point. Puts Soldier over the wall, slides onto Gangplank, pushes Gangplank back, and then that's an easy kill. At this point, C9 is still chipping away at the mid inhibitor because they think like, yeah, he died, but it's really not a big deal as long as we can take the inhibitor. But right here is that's an extremely important thing right here. So Wild Turtle was able to hit Sven with a W. So Senna's W is going to snare you and everybody that's in the circle. So when Ezreal E's out, he gets rooted not only himself, but now Zoe is also rooted. Ignar goes for a flash play, which is very good. Blabber like kind of almost stopped it, but wasn't able to. Sven dies, and now that Sven is dead, this is a time that FlyQuest could theoretically try to chase him down and get a bunch of kills, but they're fine resetting. They're down 4.5k gold. Their team composition is still pretty strong in terms of being able to deal damage, and it's still good at getting picks. So that's really what they're going to try to keep doing. This was another interesting spot right here, if I remember correctly. So right now, C9 is kind of waiting for Baron or Dragon to come onto the map. So now they're back in the mid lane. They're starting to clear away vision. And this is kind of where everything goes wrong. So right now, Cloud9 knows that they have a pink ward right here. And they're in the mid lane shoving out minions. And then at some point, Cloud9 is going to walk through this spot and just take the dragon because in their mind they can't be stopped right now. And they're kind of right. They shouldn't be stopped right now. But they didn't look to get like a vision on Shen. And again, this ward just kind of baits them. So Solo walks in, and this is kind of insane. Like it's very lucky that this happened, because most of the time this ward is going to be placed where it gets you vision on this spot. Also, C9 should be warding over this wall instead of this ward right here. This ward is pretty popular with professional teams as well because it gives you an idea of what's going on in the lane if your wave, if the wave is shoved onto you. But at the same time, this passageway is much more important for a dragon fight. I always tell my players to ward this wall instead. And Sven just is walking into the darkness. And this is the kind of thing that you should never do in League of Legends. If you don't see anybody on the enemy team, there's no reason for you to walk into like a questionable position. So C9 dies. They're down 3.3k gold. They give up Mountain Dragon. Mountain Dragon is really not the biggest problem in this fight in this game because it's most likely going to be an extended team fight where the shield shouldn't really protect too many people. The additional resistances might just make the fight go longer, but regardless of how long the fight goes, I still think that C9 should be able to poke them down and win with their gold advantage. But the gold advantage keeps dwindling. Giving away Soul isn't a benefit, and obviously giving away Baron gives like 2,000 gold plus the ability to take objectives. So we get another fight right here. And this is why you play something like Gragas. So Gragas is looking for an engage on the Power of Evil, hits him with a body slam, actually gets a really good ultimate in there as well. It stopped Azir from going over the wall, which is kind of a weird interaction, not necessarily expected. Sven is able to stay alive. Ignar dies. Blabber also dies. And this is one of the weaknesses of their team composition. Now that Gragas isn't there to soak up a lot of the damage and create engage opportunities, how is C9 going to get onto FlyQuest? And it's a trick question because they're not. So C9's probably looking to try to end the game right now. They got another pick onto Ignar, but this is where they kind of overextend. So they're on Wild Turtle. They know Wild Turtle has already flashed. So Sven is going forward aggressively. Senna gets a 4-person ult. Ezreal dies, and then that's where the pause comes in. So Sven dies, Wild Turtle manages to live. And if Sven if they went for the Elder Dragon instead of trying to chase down that fight, it's a totally different game. But again, this is the issue of not having a tank. They give up Elder Dragon, and then they obviously have to give up Baron because you can't really stop that. And then you're going to lose the game. Almost all the time. So you had a 2,000 gold advantage for a lot of this game. You continuously were over aggressive and went for skirmishes that weren't high percentage plays. Your team composition was pretty bad in terms of being able to play front to back, which is really important around these dragon fights. So I think they have a questionable read on the meta at best. They were really trying to just outplay their opponents for most of the season. So they don't they were winning games, but they weren't playing the right way most of the time, which is something that we see happen to teams like C9, G2, teams that have a lot of talent. So they lost that game. And then game 4, I'll try to keep this one quicker. Let's look at pick ban. And I really do like this draft a lot from FlyQuest. All right, so we have Ezreal again. So obviously Cloud9 thinks Ezreal is one of, if not the best champion on the patch. The response is Shen and Senna. So this is somewhat expected based off of what we've seen so far. Gangplank gets locked in against the Shen, which I still think is like a good play. It's just like they're not creating large enough leads with it. So then we have the Yumi come in as well. So that's another good pick. Maybe they're just overestimating how impactful Yumi can be in these fights. Having another like engaged champion or a champion to peel to soak up some of this damage would be pretty good, either as a support or as a jungler. But we have them going for Zoe and Lee Sin again. We have Volibear, Rakan, and Malzahar. Malzahar is the most interesting pick of this entire series, and this means that FlyQuest had this prepared, which is very smart. So basically, Zoe has her ability to jump forward and jump backward, and Malzahar can ult her when she jumps in, and as long as he doesn't get hit by a bubble to get slept, then he's going to be able to probably kill her in one shot. It also helps lock down the Ezreal. So I think it was just a really smart pick altogether. And it also continuously shoves the wave. So if you're shoving the wave, it makes it more difficult for Zoe to get picks onto you. So just a really good draft in general. It forces the other team to buy QSS, which is another good thing because that means they're investing 1,300 gold into stopping Malzahar's ult. So I'm going to try to go further ahead in this game. So C9 has an advantage once again. A very small advantage. But this is what I was talking about with giving away dragons. So why is C9 giving up this dragon? We're 20 minutes into the game. FlyQuest already has 2 dragons. Everybody on C9 has their summoners. Everybody on FlyQuest has their summoners. Ezreal doesn't have a QSS yet. Maybe that's why they're not doing this. Yumi went for an Athene's instead of a Mikhail's first. I understand why you would do that, but maybe not the best idea considering the situation that you're in. Like the fact that you know that you need a QSS, maybe just get the QSS first so that Ezreal doesn't have to buy it right away. Or maybe they're thinking to themselves, we're not even going to buy a QSS on Ezreal, we'll just buy a Mikhail's. But they end up getting the QSS. So yeah, they just give away this dragon. So now they're at a 3 dragon deficit. The gold is basically even. So the gold value of those dragons and the base stats that they give you is basically creating an advantage for FlyQuest. And still, we don't have a very easy way to engage for C9. So you're looking for things like Zoe picks around objectives, but every time an objective comes up, you're just giving it away to FlyQuest at this point. And the reason why this is so significant is because when you get to the 4th dragon, if anything bad happens but 30 seconds before the dragon starts, you're not going to be able to contest it correctly. So you could theoretically just have to give away the next dragon for free, which is the worst case scenario. So you have your 2,000 gold advantage, but how are you going to be able to actualize that gold advantage if you can't create any fights on favorable terms? So they're trying to continuously create pressure in the mid lane. Ezreal gets rooted. Malzahar gets slept. And now we're on the last dragon. So this is going to be a very important dragon fight. And it's going to be much easier for FlyQuest to get in here because they have tools to go forward. Volibear can engage, Shen can engage, Rakan can engage. If Senna gets a W onto somebody, she could like give pseudo engage. Malzahar can always ult for engage. Shen uses a blast cone to get over the wall. They get onto Niski pretty easily. Forces C9 to disengage. So now they're in a pretty vulnerable situation. Malzahar gets ulted in. Power of Evil flashes out. Rakan dies, so it's a support for a jungler. And this is probably the point where C9 feels like they're going to be able to turn the fight, but they're just not doing enough damage right now. And also, one thing that probably wasn't taken into consideration by C9 is that Malzahar is also creating Voidlings all the time, which is going to eat up a lot of the Ezreal poke. Which is kind of similar to like what Zyra can do with her plants, or just any kind of summoner, any kind of summoned thing. So C9's going back and forth trying to get into the fight to create more poke damage, but at this point Malzahar is going to have his ult up soon. And I'm sure C9 was talking about this, but the reason that C9 has to play it this way is because they already gave up 3 dragons. Like, this is such a difficult position to play from. Sven gets hit by another Senna W. Niski dies, was hit by a Malzahar ultimate again. Licorice is coming in, but what is Licorice going to do? Like, yes, Gangplank is a good champion. Yes, Gangplank does a lot of damage, but it's just not easy. Santorin gets the dragon, and now you gave up Infernal Dragon. So winning this game is going to be extremely difficult. You have the 2,000 gold advantage again, but Infernal Dragon is worth thousands of gold because of the amount of damage that it creates and the damage amplification. So in reality, I know that the gold says it's C9's up by 1,000 gold, but in the game, it's probably closer to FlyQuest plus 4,000. And then all the other things that we've been talking about with their team composition is just more difficult for C9 to play the game to begin with. But C9's not going to give up without a fight. Power of Evil goes down. Sven goes down. Ignar goes down, so now it's a 4v3. That was kind of a misplay by Ignar. And now they need to try to win another fight to get onto Baron. So, just a very difficult position to fight from. Like, if C9 was able to pull this off, it would have been crazy. Alright, so now we have an Elder Dragon and Baron on the map. Shen is currently split pushing, but he's not really trying to threaten anything. Volibear goes in for a flash engage onto the Ezreal. Ignar goes in for a shuffle, or wait, what? Oh, that was Rakan. Azir. Rakan goes in to try to get a knock-up onto Ezreal. Isn't able to find anything. Shen goes in for a chance to taunt Ezreal. Doesn't find anything. And look at the level difference, 17 to 13. Like, I understand that you want Sven to carry this game, but it's going to be very difficult. Blabber. So let's see this again. Shen goes on to the Rakan for the engage. Ignar doesn't even die. Lee Sin lands a Q, but then it gets taken into the back of the team because Rakan started going backwards. Now it's a 4v3 again, and the only reason why they lost this fight so hard in the beginning was because of the Dragon Soul, which is obviously a big reason. So, I mean, there's so much pressure on Sven to kind of do everything for his team right here. He's doing almost all of the damage, and he is the primary target for the other team. So he has to go in and out of these team fights perfectly, or he's going to get locked down with CC. Like, how are you going to stop this? Niski has to get in with a smite. And that should be the game. They're going to get Baron, and then they're going to close out the game. And that's just how it goes. I mean, so the things that I would say to kind of summarize what happened, I still think that bot lane and top lane were better for the most part on C9 in this match, but the jungle and mid for FlyQuest were able to basically win this game. And because they were focused so much on playing Yuumi, it was Yuumi against Ignar. Ignar is a very aggressive player. He's a playmaker. He can get in and create engage opportunities that other people aren't willing to do. Yuumi, on the other hand, was an extremely passive pick, sitting on Ezreal, hoping to outscale. And it just didn't really fit with a lot of their team compositions. So I think that C9 drafted poorly. They lost the early game a bunch when they didn't need to. They didn't prioritize dragons correctly or fight around the dragons correctly. They didn't draft around dragons correctly. They tried to play things like Nocturne, which is kind of just trying to like flex on everybody and say like, look, we're not even going to play the meta champions that you expect us to, and we're still going to beat you. But that game was mostly lost because of the bad early game. So I don't think Nocturne was a bad pick necessarily, but they played it out. They basically got kind of unlucky in that game. The fact that you give up a 1,000 gold advantage at like level 2, it's basically like a solo queue game. And then the last thing that I would say is I think that this does kind of help show that C9 has been overrated for a lot of the season because they were beating bad teams. They weren't forced to play the game correctly, and now it's kind of showing. Like, it's an interesting thing to kind of think about. Like, has NA failed Cloud9, or has Cloud9 failed NA? And we will certainly see in the long run. We'll see if C9 is able to move forward in playoffs, kind of shake this one off. I think they probably will be able to because they are a more talented team than most of the other teams in North America, but that's why they play the games. So, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, share, subscribe. Check me out Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. We have the Discord community. We have Patreon. And I'll talk to you later.